Temperature scales and conversions. There are three main scales for measuring temperature. First, we have Celsius. Celsius uses the base reference points of water freezing at 0 degrees and boiling at 100 degrees. So the Celsius temperature scale is based around water's freezing and boiling points. Next, we have the Fahrenheit scale. Fahrenheit uses the base reference points of water freezing at 32 degrees and boiling at 212 degrees. So Fahrenheit also uses water's freezing and boiling points as base reference points, but its scale is different. You can see the degrees for water's freezing and boiling points are higher in the Fahrenheit scale than in the Celsius scale. The third main scale for measuring temperature is the Kelvin scale. And Kelvin is an absolute temperature scale. This means its 0 mark corresponds to absolute 0. It isn't based on the freezing or boiling point of water. It is based on absolute 0, where that starts and then goes up from it. And absolute 0 is the coldest possible temperature. So absolute 0 is the coldest possible temperature. It's going to be 0. And working up from there, we get to water's freezing point at 273.15 Kelvin. And its boiling point at 373.15 Kelvin. Kelvin does not use degree terminology. So where we would say degrees Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius, we would just say Kelvin with the Kelvin temperature scale. So where Kelvin is an absolute temperature scale based on absolute 0, and it's more corresponding to the laws of thermodynamics than to how any other substance behaves, Celsius and Fahrenheit are both relative temperature scales. They were developed relative to the freezing and boiling points of water. And clearly the scales did develop differently, since Celsius says it freezes at 0 and boils at 100, and Fahrenheit says it freezes at 32 and boils at 212. So, now that we've talked about our three main scales, Celsius and Fahrenheit, which are relative to water's freezing and boiling point, and Kelvin, which is based on where absolute 0 is, let's look at how we can convert between these three main scales. You are not likely to see any temperatures given in a measurement other than Celsius, Fahrenheit, or Kelvin. So it's important that you learn these three and then learn how to convert between the three in case you are trying to get Fahrenheit and you've been given Kelvin. So first, let's convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. The formula for that is to plug in your Celsius temperature and do 9/5 times your Celsius temperature plus 32. And that'll give you your degrees Fahrenheit. And that makes sense that you're multiplying by a mixed number, which is going to give you something bigger, and adding 32, because your Celsius temperature starts lower than your Fahrenheit temperature. So if we were to say 0, if we had 0 degrees Celsius, 9/5 times 0 is 0, plus 32 is 32, well, 0 degrees Celsius equals 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And that makes sense because they should both be the same, since they are saying that at that equal temperature is when water freezes. It freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, it freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, so it makes sense that they would both, that translating 0 degrees Celsius would equal 32 degrees Fahrenheit. They should be an equal temperature because they both are representing when water freezes. Let's look at a different temperature, 50 degrees Celsius. So let's plug it in. we'll have degrees Fahrenheit equals 9/5 times 50 plus 32. Okay? 50 times 9 is going to be 450 because 9 times 5 is 45, and then we just add that 0 onto the end. And then we have to divide by 5. Dividing by 5, 5 goes into 45 9 times, and we can carry that 0 up there. So 9/5 times 50 is 90, and we need to add that to our 32. 2 plus 0 is 2, 9 plus 3 is 12. So 50 degrees Celsius equals 122 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you were to hold something that was 50 degrees Celsius, it would also be 122 degrees Fahrenheit. And you probably wouldn't want to be holding it because that would be pretty warm. Okay, next let's convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Again, if we said 32 degrees Fahrenheit should equal 0 degrees Celsius. If we plugged in 32 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 32 would be 0. 0 times 5/9 would be 0. And so 32 degrees Fahrenheit would equal 0 degrees Celsius. Let's look at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's convert that to degrees Celsius. So we're going to plug in degrees Celsius equals 5/9 times 50 minus 32. Okay, so 50 minus 32 is 18, and we need to do 18 times 5. 8 times 5 is 40. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. And then 90 divided by 9 equals 10. So 50 degrees Fahrenheit equals 10 degrees Celsius. So if you can remember these formulas, then you will be able to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius and Celsius to Fahrenheit. And you can see they're very similar. 9/5 times Celsius plus 32, 5/9 times Fahrenheit minus 32. And you have to do the taking away 32 before you multiply times 5/9. Otherwise, your answer is not going to come out the right way. So let's look at converting Celsius to Kelvin. There's no direct formula for Fahrenheit to Kelvin. It would just be basically combining the Fahrenheit to Celsius and then Celsius to Kelvin. So it would be best to do it as a two-step process. So if we have 50 degrees Celsius and we want to convert it to Kelvin, we're going to plug in over here. Degrees Celsius, 50 plus 273.15, and we're just going to add them together. So let's put 50 over here so it's all nice and lined up. And we get 323.15 Kelvin. And remember, we don't use degrees with the Kelvin scale. Converting Kelvin to Celsius is just the opposite. You take the Kelvin temperature and subtract 273.15. So our degrees Celsius is going to equal, if we're using 350 Kelvin, 350 minus 273.15. We need to go ahead and put some zeros on there so that we can subtract the decimal. Borrow our way across. 10 minus 5 is 5, 9 minus 1 is 8, 9 minus 3 is 6. We got to borrow again. 14 minus 7 is 7, 2 minus 2 is 0. So 350 Kelvin equals 76.85 degrees Celsius. And with Celsius, we do say degrees. It is a degree-based scale. So 76.85 degrees Celsius is equal to 350 Kelvin. Remember, your three main scales for temperature are Celsius, Fahrenheit, and Kelvin. Celsius and Fahrenheit are based on when water freezes and boils, where Kelvin is based on absolute zero. And then try to memorize these formulas to be able to convert between Fahrenheit and Celsius, and then between Celsius and Kelvin, so you can get the temperature that you need.